Go to the description to vote on who gets covered for next month's dive, and also check out the Spotify playlist with all the songs from this video and more. Thanks and enjoy. Welcome back to the Deep Discog Dive, and I'm pissed. Every month I take a look at artists who are critically acclaimed. The market is cornered by big consensus, and I refuse to play along. Like, look at this. No! I'd love to talk about a divisive band, figure out why they're so divisive, and see if we miss anything by just outright rejecting them. I want all of those things. But I don't know where to start. Well, paying my electric bill might be a good start. Thinking it's time to go. Here we go. Today, we're talking about AJR. Let's dive in. Adam, Jack, and Ryan Met are three brothers born and raised in New York City. If you put their names together, you get a Jar Yak Dam. But if you separate them, take their first initials, and put those together, you get AJR. The trio grew up first in Queens, then in Manhattan. While attending the professional children's school, they started getting into writing and performing music. Much of their early experience was busking in Central Park and Washington Square Park, and the money they earned was used to buy more instruments, more gear, and eventually a full-on recording studio in the living room of their Chelsea apartment. They released 2 albums in 2010 and an EP in 2012, but they've been lost to time. The earliest body of work that currently exists is the I'm Ready EP from 2013. Nearly all of these songs would go on to their first album, but before that, let's talk about the title track. I don't think I've ever dedicated a full section of a DDD to a song before, but I want to with I'm Ready because it's a textbook example of their songwriting and production styles. For better or worse. If an AI had to write the de facto 2013 pop song, it would probably sound like I'm Ready, except for one part, but I'll touch on that in a moment. Upbeat production, lyrics about seizing the night with someone you fancy. The music video has a very 2013 feel, with the band going from a routine college dorm performance, I think, to blowing up on social media. There's a reference to Glee, and I'm sure these guys were just gunning to have their song performed by Dominant 7th Sharp 9th alongside Pedestrian Crosswalk, so it's a totally acceptable song. No big deal, right? Here's the thing though, the title of this song comes from a sample, which raises a question. What are they sampling? So the group's first big single bases itself around a SpongeBob sample. Now, to be clear, I have no problem with SpongeBob. It was one of my favorite shows growing up, and its humor has aged so well. If you came up to me and quoted a line from the show, I'd probably respond with, sorry, I don't speak Italian. But I don't know, it's weird to force nostalgia into your otherwise basic love song like this. It's like if I proposed to someone by serenading them with My Shiny Teeth and Me. Plus, SpongeBob's endearing, but he's also meant to be kind of annoying, and if you don't think so, I guarantee you'll agree by the last chorus of the song. Hopefully, this will be the last time they try using nostalgia as a substitute for meaningful songwriting. Shh. Nobody tell him. I'm Ready is worth singling out for another reason. After its initial release, the band tweeted out the song to a bunch of musicians, including fellow creator of music and music, Sia. She sent the song to former Columbia Records president Steve Greenberg, who then started co-managing the group. They also signed a deal between Warner Bros. Records and their own label, AJR Productions. So yeah, AJR were technically an independent band with full creative control over their output. They just also had their marketing handled by one of the biggest labels in the world. A few years later, the group put out their first album. Living Room, released in March 2015, was recorded in AJR's living room. A very basic background for a very basic album. Okay, we're starting off easy. Living Room is pretty meh. The songs here are less pieces of music written to express a feeling had by those who wrote it, and more demos to pitch to ad agencies for commercial placement. Most of the lyrics are your typical fare about love, partying, and feeling good about yourself. The exceptions are the most interesting though. As one example, Pitchfork Kids takes aim at the music communities that don't like it when you sample SpongeBob on your song. On the production end, the trio go for hybrids of early 2010s pop and homages to 60s and 70s singer-songwriters like Frankie Valli and the Beach Boys. The songs are definitely stronger when they lean towards the latter, like Growing Old on Bleecker Street and the now unfortunately named Woody Allen. Now I'm feeling just like Woody Allen. That did not age well at all. When they go towards the modern end is where the album really suffers. Thirsty lost 90% of my interest with the Thirsty, Thirsty, Thursday, and the other 10% went with the yodeling. Big Idea bases its hook around unnecessary pitch shifting, and these weird pulsating flanges in the chorus are more distracting than good. In total, Living Room is at its best when it's just three dudes sticking to tried and true songwriting tropes, and at its worst when it tries to throw all of Pro Tools' processing power in your face. I wonder which direction they'll lean towards on their next album. Vote now on your phones. After releasing their first album, the brothers met were off to study at college. Ryan and Jack began their film degrees at Columbia, and Adam started his PhD in human rights law at the University of Birmingham. They also left their deal with Warner Brothers, and from here on out, their records would be distributed by BMG and Sony Music. Oh, and at some point, Jack apparently wore a bomber hat during a show, and everyone loved it so much that he began wearing it all the time, which disproves my theory that he just really liked because the internet. This period of transition and coming of age was the major inspiration for their second studio album, The Click, released in June 2017. You may already know this, but The Click is considered in some circles to be one of the worst albums of the past 10 years. Many of the biggest videos on this very site about AJR spend their runtimes dragging this album and the band through the mud. And I'll be honest with you, some of them are really fun to watch.
I've read Season 5 Glee fanfic with more engaging and fleshed out character and dramatic stakes.
Mark, if you ever watch this, I just want to thank you for specifying Season 5. But The Click is pretty much the definitive AJR album, in that you will love the rest of the albums if you love this, and you will despise the band if you hate this. So what do I think of it? It's at this point where we enter potentially hostile territory, so I'd like to make a few things clear. One, if you're watching this and you're a fan of AJR, I want you to know that none of my critiques or opinions about their music are meant to be attacks on you or your relationship with their music. The discourse around this band and this album specifically can be pretty loaded, and maybe it's just the global pandemic talking, but I don't have the energy in me to be mad about people liking music that I don't. Two, we'll soon be talking about topics like depression and anxiety and how they're depicted in AJR's music, and I want to be clear that any critiques that I have are aimed at the depictions and not the actual members of AJR. I have nothing against these guys, and I do not want to inspire any kind of harassment towards them. So let's start off with the positive. The strings. I'll discuss general production in a hot sec, but I liked most of the string arrangements on here. I'm always a sucker for a good secondary dominant, and the good part uses one in its string section. The backbone of Sober Up is this syncopated cello part, and it hooked me in quickly, though that may also be because I feel like I've heard it in a Verizon ad once. Also, the record's concept isn't terrible. The Click deals with trying to weather the adult world while feeling very much like a kid. I think that's something all of us go through at some point in our lives, and we all find our own ways to navigate that kind of internal crisis. Do we choose financial stability and sacrifice following our passion, or vice versa? The boys sum up that conflict on the opener and closer.
Should I go more clicks this year, or should I follow the click in my ear?
There are good ideas on here. In theory. In practice, the game you play with the Click is how long will it take for this given song to completely lose me? Let's take Overture for an example. I really like this song. For the first 50 seconds, the click at the start is so on the nose that it is the nose, but the piano sounds great, the vocal that they bring in from the final track sounds good, the trumpet interjecting is a nice touch. You're lulled into a sense that this will be fun, and then it turns into a 90s hip-hop EDM pastiche with virtually no heads up, and spends the rest of the runtime blazing through half-baked versions of each song. But you know, that's an overture that incorporates all of the other songs. It can't help but be a bit discombobulated, so let's play this game with other songs. I mentioned the good part as a highlight, but it's held back by an obnoxious vocal hook and unnecessary pitch-shifted counting. I do not like the key change in Weak. It feels unearned, like the song is taking me somewhere I never wanted to go. Why do the crowd vocals come in on the first chorus of Sober Up? I know that's a really specific critique, but I feel like crowd vocals are meant to encourage singing along, so why are AJR putting them on the first chorus of a song that I've never heard? That's the weird thing about this album sometimes. It equates more with better. It throws every musical idea within the first minute of a song and then has to try to find ways to keep you interested for the rest of it. One of those ways is AJR singing hooks like they're pterodactyls. They'll definitely get stuck in your head, but in the worst way possible. Also, like on Living Room, there are these random pitch-shifting vocal breakdowns. The first time they appear, it's neat. By the 5th or 6th, it's really annoying. Plus, the one song that would actually benefit from some extra vocal processing, Call My Dad, doesn't have any outside of some basic vocoding. I don't know, maybe that's just the Boy Bear fan in me talking. And now allow the lyrics fan in me to start talking. The lyrics on here have glimmers of promise, but the execution runs the gamut from generic to self-absorbed. I get that No Grass Today is about not forcing other people to live how you think they should, but on my first listen, it came across as, I don't think weed is good, but like, you can smoke it. But like, I don't think it does anybody any good, and it shouldn't be something people turn to, and honestly, people can get really addicted to it, and anybody who sells it should go to jail, but like, you do you. I like how Turning Out is about realizing the process of growing up and falling in love with someone is way messier than you would think as a kid, but when your big climactic moment revolves around you screaming, 3:30 is a song about a song that's 3 minutes and 30 seconds. You know how in movies they'll call attention to plot contrivances and then move along as if acknowledging them fixes them being there in the first place? Anyway, the lowest point on here lyrically is Netflix Trip. This one has the narrator looking back on major events of their life as viewed through a show they were watching on Netflix. I get it. TV shows can make a lasting impression on us, and Netflix is a huge part of our lives and media engagement, but there is something so hokey about having this sweeping production and a chorus about savoring every moment, and then dropping a line about your grandpa dying while you were watching season 6 of The Office. Which, yes, they're talking about The Office because of course they are. Again, I see the nuggets of good ideas in these songs, but I am often put off by their composition and lyrics. One of the most consistent defenses I've found for this album is that it's good music to turn your brain off to. It sounds fun, it's upbeat, and for some people, that's enough. And maybe you want to tell me or have already commented down below that I shouldn't try to overthink their music. If you're one of those people, my response is, welcome to Mike the Snare, subscribe if you're new. Overthinking music is kind of what I do here. You don't have to agree with that, but that's just what I do. The Click is frankly fascinating. It's not good, but I also think everyone should listen to it at least once, just because its flaws are so unique to this band. The album it reminds me of the most in how uniquely flawed it is Taylor Swift's Reputation, and I'm not a fan of that album, but I also started an entire YouTube channel because of that album. Make of that what you will. The Click and its deluxe edition with added songs garnered AJR a lot more attention, in both good and less good ways. Hit singles, a lengthy tour, tons of new fans, and tons of not fans. They also put out these clips of Ryan breaking down the production of the album, which is a trend they'll continue for the next 2 albums. And to be real with you, I like these a lot. I like when artists peel back their session files and show the inspiration and process for coming up with songs. These videos, specifically, also show that these guys do have musical chops, which makes it all the more disappointing when they pair these compositions with lyrics like Anyway, after touring for The Click, the trio continued going to school, gathering inspiration for the next album, Neotheater, released in April 2019. This one is framed as a coming-of-age tale, which is what I thought The Click was, but okay. So let's start off again with the positive. This one's better than The Click. The lows on this album are not as plenty or as deep as The Click's lows were. In fact, once again, the opener, Next Up Forever, shows a good deal of promise. These Disney-style harmonies, the kind of beat that screams second line for Friday on the Coachella poster vibes, lyrics about not wanting to move on that are kinda wish I was still a virgin, time to finally see what sex is like. Not great, but an improvement, I guess. I also like how, on some songs, they incorporate elements from other songs on the album, and even past songs. The overture on The Click was a cool idea, but it also felt like a flimsy way to set up a story when the album could just tell a story. On Neotheater, they call back to I'm Ready on the opener, Turning Out gets a part 2, and they bring back the hook from 100 Bad Days on Karma. That said, just like with The Click, I reach a point where I can't really defend these songs, and it's around the time they sing a song about moving away from home called Don't Throw Out My Legos. I like how Birthday Party tries to go for a mini story with the narrator being born and trying to keep a sense of innocence as they grow up. I do not like these vocals sampled from David Lynch's Eraserhead though.
Wow.
What the hell?
I am honestly baffled at how they thought it would be a thing people would want to listen to. Beats is, in concept, about the band's trepidation over accepting sponsorships from companies like Beats by Dre, and in execution, it comes off as an attempt to promote Beats by Dre through reverse psychology. I've warmed up to 100 Bad Days since I first listened to it, but I am not a fan of the da-da-da-da-das, and I especially don't like the syncopated horns in the last minute. Also, I get the song's message is about difficult life experiences making you a more enriched person, but the way they phrase that...
100 bad days made 100 good stories. 100 good stories make me interesting at party.
comes off as really self-absorbed. Speaking of which, Dear Winter is an intimate ode to the narrator's future daughter, with nice guitar work offsetting a hook that is once again nasally as heck. But when you start looking at the lyrics, it starts reading like this guy doesn't realize that he'll be parenting this kid with another person who likely would have their own input into naming and raising said kid. I doubt that was their intent, but still, it comes off as questionable. Overall, Neotheater is better than The Click, but its lows aren't as interesting and its highs aren't as memorable. Neotheater was the band's best performing album to date and spawned more big hits for the trio. AJR toured Neotheater for most of 2019, with news late that year announcing a second leg of the tour starting in spring 2020. They even put out a new song in February 2020 called Bang to help get people excited for the tour. This is great, nothing will go wrong. So I don't know if any of you remember, but a thing happened last year, and like every other touring act, AJR were grounded for 2020. They did videos showing their Pro Tool sessions for some songs, which again is a cool thing that I like. They did some drive-in concerts that were all the rage last year, and some virtual events. Not to mention, that song they put out in February was kind of blowing up. Bet the next album they make will be called Metronome. Remember this comment. Creasy, I'm so sorry. After a few more singles, they released their fourth studio album, OK Orchestra, released just 2 weeks ago in March 2021. Also, side note, is it weird that we've gotten 2 records this year with titles inspired by OK Computer? The trio has said before that Broadway musicals were a big source of inspiration for their music, and OK Orchestra wears that inspiration the most out of any AJR album yet. On one hand, it's a look that can suit AJR well. Tracks like World's Smallest Violin and 3 O'Clock Things don't reinvent the wheel, but they were catchy and pleasant to listen to. And you know what? That one line in 3 O'Clock about doing YouTube, I didn't mind it. Though wait, if he did YouTube as a job, why would he have to watch ads? That's something that someone viewing them does, not someone... Sorry, I'm getting distracted. At the same time, learning about their Broadway inspirations made me realize the worst AJR tracks exude a theater kid try-hard mentality in their production. And hey, that's not a diss. I was a theater kid in middle and high school. I get it. But sometimes I wish they would just take one musical idea and develop it instead of throwing 10 in at once and calling it a day. Joe tackles childhood idol worship with these cloying vocal samples that sound like they were ripped straight from Sibelius. The Trick with its sweeping string work would be one of my favorite tracks if this tiny Tim filter wasn't on most of the vocals. The da-da-das on Bummerland are sung and layered so heavy that they kill any momentum the song might have for me. But once again, there are still promising moments on here. One of the singles, My Play, focuses on the fallout of a divorce, which might be one of the best topics they've tackled yet. Divorces are often messy processes, and they can skew a young kid's perception of love and basic human connection beyond recognition. Plus, I like the instrumentation and overall build-up on this one, but still, the band can't escape writing lyrics as if they're kids, and any depth or insight that could have been mined just isn't there. Which begs a question, when are these guys gonna grow up? As of this video, AJR are in their mid to late 20s. 2 of them are older than me, and yet the past 3 records have all been slight variations on the same topics. Feeling like a kid, hesitancy to grow up and fall in love, clinging on to the past. OK Orchestra does take steps away from that focus, but at this rate, it'll be another like 5 albums before they stop singing about childhood, and by then they'll be 30-somethings singing about avocado toast and Here Come Dat Boy. The one song that makes the biggest shift in subject matter is the aforementioned Bang. And it's such a weird nothing of a song. If we hadn't been living in Hell World 2020, I don't think this would have been as big of a hit. I like parts of the song. I like the piano at the start. I like how they got the guy who does the New York City subway messages to do the Here We Goes. There is clearly a lot of thought put into this theatrical trap production. But for what? What does going out with a bang in this song mean? The rest of the song is talking about begrudgingly accepting adult responsibilities. So is this supposed to be sarcastic? Or is it like one last big party? Because I don't feel like partying to this song. And the way they describe adult responsibilities is so generic and stereotypical.
Feel like I'm gonna puke, cause my taxes are due. Do my password begin with a 1 or a 2?
It comes off as if they've never actually had to deal with anything they're talking about. That might be the crux of my mixed feelings with the band. I often feel like I'm being sold my own millennial experience back to me. As if a giant marketing firm researched all the various aspects of millennial life and got 3 guys who never had to deal with any of it to write songs about it. If the market wants a version of 21 Pilots or John Bellion with a hearty affliction of Arrested Development, then the market can have it. But these songs throw such a wide net, hoping to catch as many listeners as possible, and the result is that very little of it feels genuine to me. That could change someday, and OK Orchestra is their best album yet, but that's not a glowing recommendation, it's a half-hearted acceptance.
Watching my play.
Considering that OK Orchestra is 2 weeks old as of this video, there haven't been any major new developments. I'm sure the Met Brothers are planning for their next tour, writing more songs, continuing their education. Ryan and Jack have mentioned a TV pilot they've been writing, so I guess we'll see if that comes to fruition. So, AJR. I don't hate them. This was my first listen for all of these records, and I wanted to give them all a fair shake and form my own opinion on them. And I think I get their appeal. They have musical talent, to be sure, and the topics they explore about being a millennial and trying to find your place in the world are worth exploring. But more often than not, the execution is just... let's just say it's not for me and leave it at that. But I'm still glad I did this. I think it's worthwhile sometimes to explore music that you may have dismissed in the past and see for yourself if you like it or don't like it. If you enjoy their music or if it's helped you, especially in the past year, I'm glad you got more out of it than I did. And if you want to get into AJR, check out the most recent album, and the Click too, but more as a litmus test. And if you have a favorite AJR song or album or related thing, I would love to know what it is in the comments. Again, the poll for next month's dive is in the description, so please go vote in that if you want to say on who gets covered next month, and be sure to check out the Spotify playlist. Thanks for watching.